The next event after this response from Jesus is healing a man with a withered hand on the Sabbath in the same places immediately after this event, also in Matthew 12. Okay, so how to begin? Matthew 12:9. And when he was departed from there, he went into their synagogue. Mark 3, verse 1. And he entered into the synagogue. So I'd have to put that first sentence first, and the last sentence is pretty much the same. Luke 6:6. And it came to pass also on another Sabbath that he entered into the synagogue and taught. Okay, well that is definitely more descriptive. So between Matthew and Luke is that first sentence. And it came to pass also on another Sabbath. And when he was departed from there, that's where I'll have to start. And when he was departed from there, then over to Luke, it came to pass also on another Sabbath. And I'll have that first and be both. So Matthew and Luke is orange, and now Matthew only. When he was departed from there, Luke only. It came to pass also on another Sabbath. Now I can combine this last sentence. Luke says that he entered into the synagogue and taught. Mark, and he entered into the synagogue. Actually, that and, I might be able to put that at the very beginning. He entered into the synagogue. He entered into the synagogue. Okay. But that would have to come before. Matthew, he went into their synagogue. Entered. Entered is used twice as opposed to went. I might be able to put both. He went and entered. He went from Matthew, and he entered from Mark. I can put that first. He went from Matthew, and he entered from both Mark and Luke into the synagogue. Yeah, that's what I'll do. So I'm definitely going to put the word that from Luke first. He went. I'm not going to say he went and he entered. I want to say he went and entered. Luke just says that he entered. I could say the he comes next. Yeah, he could come next from Luke. But for Mark, I know it's going to be a little weird because it says, oh no, okay, I could just put the he from Mark as well. Oh no, that and, that's right. The very first word of this sentence in Mark is and then he. And I know I'm going to say he went and entered, which means I have to move over this he from Mark to come before and. Which I don't think that's too big of a problem. I'm pretty much going from Matthew and Luke. He went into the synagogue, but I'm saying he went, pause, going to Mark first, and then to Luke, he entered. So it's almost as if I'm skipping this he from Mark, but I will still mention that it's there. So I'm not moving the he around, I'm just mentioning that it's also present. It will flow perfectly. That he went. He is from all three. Went from Matthew only, and from Mark only. Entered is from Mark and Luke, so dark yellow. Yeah, it's like I'm skipping over the he from Mark, and I'm just mentioning the he from Matthew and Luke in their order, but I'm also saying that the he is there, it's just not in that place. I'm not changing anything because that's how it goes in Matthew and Luke. He went, or he entered. I'm putting that together. He went and entered. Yeah, it's fine. So after this in Luke, it just goes into the synagogue and taught. Mark, he entered again into the synagogue. Matthew, he went into. Okay, so again is Mark only. Again, Matthew, into their synagogue. Mark, into the synagogue. The is actually the first half of the word there, but it's a different word. It's kind of the same thing with therefore and for. Is it? No, it's not. No, it's not. The and there is different. It is more different than therefore and for. Like when for comes at the beginning of a sentence, it's pretty much the same thing as therefore, but the and there is not the same. So I'll cut that out from Mark into the synagogue. Luke into the synagogue. Okay, so again, into is from all three, and I'll say there from Matthew only. Pray into there, Matthew only. And synagogue is all three. Luke adds and taught. So Luke only. I know there's a colon right after that, so I'll include a space from Luke. And taught, colon. Mark, synagogue, semicolon. Matthew, synagogue, and behold, there was a man. It still seems like a semicolon would be better here. He went into the synagogue, and behold, there was a man with a withered hand. It's not like what follows is a result or is there specifically because of what came before. He went into the synagogue. A comma would be okay. He went into the synagogue, and behold, there was a man which had a withered hand. If it was just a comma, it would be okay, which makes me believe that a semicolon would be just fine, which is in Mark. Okay, so the next words are Matthew 12:10. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. Mark 3:1b. And there was a man there which had a withered hand. And behold, there was a man, and there was a man there. There was a man. Okay, there was a man. That's the same. Luke 6:6c. And there was a man whose right hand was withered, which had his hand. Well, I'll put the first part first. And there was a man, and there was a man, and behold, there was a man. So, and is from all three. But there is, in Matthew, comma, behold, comma. So there was a man is all three. So now to choose between whose right hand was withered, or which had a withered hand, or which had his hand withered. Any one of those would fit with this extra word from Mark. There was a man there. So I'm going to add that word now from Mark. There was a man there. Now the question, which had a withered hand, which had his hand withered? Both of those say which. Whose right hand was withered? You know, depending on your point of view, it could go either way. Because if you're saying that people are our spirits and we have a body, then it would make more sense to say he had a withered hand, or he had a hand that was withered. So it would fit more with Matthew and Mark. The man which had his hand withered. But if you're trying to be personal with the man with the withered hand, you'd say it's that man's hand. It belongs to him. I mean, he is in pain. And there was a man whose right hand was withered. So it would sort of be like you're recognizing this man has a handicap. This kind of reminds me of this guy who's actually handicapped. He was a tricking wheelchair rider. That was his identity. He wasn't in a wheelchair, he was on a wheelchair. He was riding his wheelchair, and he did a lot. He was doing flips on half pipes and stuff. So I guess it depends on how do I want to look at it. Is the man handicapped, or is just part of his body handicapped, which is not really him. We are our spirits. We are not our bodies. I think I'm going to go with we are our spirits. We have a body, and parts of our body may be damaged or handicapped, but that's not us. We are not defined by our handicaps. So I'm going to go with what's said in Matthew and Mark, which is better for another reason, because it's the majority witness. Which had is used twice instead of whose. Which had his hand withered, which had a withered hand. So which had is from Matthew, Mark. I like that. So now the rest of it, which had his hand withered, or from Mark, a withered hand. You know, I think because his from this sentence had his hand withered is in italics from Matthew, that's a translator entry, addition. So without that, it would say which had hand withered, in which case it would make much more sense to say it the way Mark does, which had a withered hand, because there's no italics in this sentence. So I'm going to go with that from Mark only. I'll say the words are still there, but this a is only in Mark. And then withered hand, that's both. It's out of order in regards to Matthew, but I'm just saying it's there because it's present, and I don't want to leave out a witness, which had a withered hand.